The United States has slapped additional tariffs against China. How is the US-China trade war likely to impact economies like India? And can India expect any concessions from the United States? Joining us right now is the President of the US-India Business Council, Nisha Biswal. Thanks for speaking to us, Nisha.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Our first question, can India expect any concessions from President Donald Trump and the United States as far as these steel and aluminium tariffs are concerned?
Well, let me first state that the U.S.-India Business Council and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce have come out very strongly against the imposition of these tariffs. We do understand the position of the administration on trying to ensure that American producers of steel and aluminum have a level playing field globally. And we do understand concerns that some countries may be exerting unfair practices. On the other hand, these kinds of tariffs will create retaliation and will create rising prices that will impact all companies and all consumers. And so we have advocated that there ought to be negotiation and there ought to be collaborative efforts to try to address these problems rather than the imposition of unilateral tariffs.
We're looking at a $21 billion trade deficit that Donald Trump has been talking about. India in recent meetings has been trying to say that don't look at this number in isolation. There are companies which are providing raw material to the US. There are students who are going to the United States. And some of US's own policies are hampering exports. So how do you see this? And do you think there is some sort of acknowledgement at the level of the US government now?
Well, I think that there are a number of issues on both sides that both governments are seeking to resolve. And certainly the President has focused on the trade imbalance in a number of relationships around the world. I would say that the trade imbalance between the United States and India is rather smaller than some of the larger ones that he's focused on. And that the trajectory has actually been in the right direction as India imports more of its energy from the United States, as India has really boosted acquisition in defense and in civil aviation, that those imports have actually helped to slightly diminish that trade imbalance. But really the most important statistic to look at to judge the health of our trading partnership is not the trade imbalance. Because on the other hand, you're also seeing a lot of investment of Indian companies into the United States, and we want to continue to attract that investment. And we want to see the overall two-way trade and investment continue to grow. We're at approximately $115 billion right now. And we would like to find the win-win equations that actually allow us to double and quintuple that.
Right.
And that's where I think there needs to be sustained dialogue on the basket of issues on both sides that will clear a path for greater trade and investment flows between our two countries.
Looking at this trade war with China, an additional set of tariffs have been announced today. How do you think this is going to impact India, and how is it likely to escalate in the days to come?
Well, clearly the U.S. Chamber has taken a very strong position about the dangers of a trade war, and that in a trade war there are no winners, and consumers and workers in both countries and in many other countries that are impacted by this will be adversely impacted. Some of the analysis that has been done says that the number of job losses in the United States emanating from the retaliatory tariffs could be in the hundreds of thousands. So there's a real danger that a trade war could escalate into a much greater impact on the economy and could end up pushing the United States certainly closer towards a recession. So we have advocated very strongly against an escalation, and really what we ought to be doing is having some very serious conversations about some of these issues.
So do you feel that this will eventually stop President Trump, because we're looking at this global trade war and you have the US Chambers of Commerce sounding a warning over here. Do you think this will eventually force the US administration to do a rethink?
Oh, one would certainly hope so.
The sanctions against Iran are going to kick in very soon. India has been hoping for some concessions. There have been talks also going on with the United States. Do you think, as far as our oil imports from Iran is concerned, US would be ready to make any sort of relief measure or concession, or is it completely non-negotiable?
I would hesitate to speak for the administration. I think that there are conversations ongoing between the two governments, and I imagine that there will be some discussion about, on the one hand, what steps India can take to dramatically reduce or curtail its import of Iranian oil, and on the other hand, some expectation from India for some accommodation. India has, to its credit, dramatically reduced the amount of Iranian oil that it imports as an overall part of its energy mix. And it has come down from, Iran used to be the leading source of energy for India of oil, and it is now somewhere like number 5. And so that trajectory has been moving in the right direction.
All right. Now, we have been talking about Iran. We've spoken about China. As far as the health of the US-India relationship is concerned, do you think this trade war with China, this insistence on correcting the trade deficit with India, these tariffs on steel and aluminium, do you think it's going to impact the overall health of the Indo-US relationship?
Look, I fundamentally believe that the US-India relationship is one of the strongest relationships for both countries, and that the path forward is going to continue to deepen and strengthen that partnership. Are we going to have some challenges in the short term, some headwinds that we have to overcome? Yes, absolutely.
All right. Nisha Biswal, thank you very much for speaking to CNBC TV 18. So that was Nisha's message. Nisha, hopeful and optimistic about Indo-US relations, saying that the current round of tensions on the economic front will be there, but the overall health of the relationship is intact.
Indeed.
Thanks for watching.